Hey there, internet friends, and welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. If you like the show, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Joining me once again, we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
Happy 4th of July to you as we
Happy
are
4th of July.
recording this Thursday evening, hopefully before fireworks start popping off. And yeah, as we touched on kind of a couple episodes ago, we're doing our every other week check-in with the Acolyte here to talk about episodes 5 and 6 of the Acolyte. That is the episodes Knight and Teach/Corrupt. If you want more of our Acolyte thoughts, we have that D Plus Show episode 219, where we talk about the first two episodes, and then episode 221, where we talked about episodes 3 and 4. And then we'll be back in 2 more weeks to talk about the final 2 episodes here of the Acolyte. That's why we pick it, because it's the Star Wars thing that is kind of in the conversation these days. Our history lesson here, this run of episodes, or the series itself, kind of running between June 4th and July 16th. The series has a runtime between 35 and 45 minutes per episode. And in our Star Wars TV timeline of things, we had Obi-Wan Kenobi back in summer of 22, Andor in September through November of 22, The Mandalorian Season 3, March and April of 2023, Ahsoka Season 1, August through October of 2023, The Acolyte here now, June and July. Up next, we have Skeleton Crew TBD 2024, and I, from the weird Lego Instagram pages I follow, saw a leak of a Skeleton Crew Lego set that has already started hitting stores. That'll probably be like released in August, so that probably means that show is more or less around the corner. We have Andor Season 2 TBD, probably next year, 2025, and Ahsoka Season 2 somewhere out there on the horizon, 2025 maybe, 2026 maybe, who knows. Our roll call, we won't run through everybody, since a lot of these names are people who've just kind of covered already, but specific to this particular episode, where we're covering episodes 5 and 6, we have the director/showrunner, Leslie Headland. She was not the director for either of these episodes, but is the kind of showrunner overall, having worked on The Bachelorette, Sleeping with Other, or not The Bachelorette, a film called Bachelorette, Sleeping with Other People, the series Heathers, and Russian Doll. Of these episodes, the director of Night is Alex Garcia Lopez, who we talked about a little bit last time. They also directed the preceding episode, Day. They have a miscellaneous set of directing credits going back to 2001, including shows like Fear the Walking Dead, Luke Cage, Daredevil, The Punisher, The Witcher, and Cowboy Bebop. And new to this episode, we have Hanelle Culpepper, directed Teach, episode 6, or Teach/Corrupt, episode 6 here. They have credits going back to 2002, including a whole bunch of like nerd fair stuff like Gotham, The Flash, Supergirl, Star Trek Picard, Star Trek Discovery, and Westworld. Our writers here for episode 5, that was written by the duo of Cora Adana, who we talked about previously because they also wrote on Day. They are most notably have written for Mr. Robot. And then joining them on writing duty for Night was Cameron Squires, new to kind of the crew of writers here, having previously been a staff writer on WandaVision. And then for Teach/Corrupt, Leslie Headland returns to writing duty on that episode, having worked on Terriers, Bachelorette, About Last Night, Sleeping with Other People, and Russian Doll. And she is joined by Jocelyn Bio for Teach and Corrupt, having also written on Russian Doll and a film, I believe, called Merry Wives. Our cast of characters, no real new characters across these couple episodes. Amanda Stenberg continuing to be May and Asha. having been in The Hunger Games, The Hate You Give, Dear Evan Hansen, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Lee Jung-jae is Master Soul from Squid Game. Manny Jacinto kind of elevated now to having been Khmer previously, but now obviously in episodes 5 and 6 is revealed as the Stranger, seemingly the big bad of the series, having been in The Good Place and Top Gun Maverick. Daphne Keane playing Jackie Lan, rest in peace. She's been in stuff like Logan and His Dark Materials. Also, rest in peace to the Yord Horde. Charlie Barnett as Yord Fandar also sees his end here, having been in stuff like Men in Black 3, Chicago Fire, and Russian Doll. And Rebecca Henderson seemingly maybe going to get a little bit more spotlight here in the tail end of the season as Vernest Rowe, having been in Westworld, Werewolves Within, and Russian Doll. A little bit of trivia here. Shout out to, we highlighted it back in the first episode that we talked about of The Acolyte, but Yord was the one who had the titular, or the iconic, I've got a bad feeling about this. And he was right to.
Yep.
Trivia for these particular episodes, for episode 5 Night, and shout out to you for catching this and flagging it before I even saw it in any of the Easter eggy breakdown things. But as would be later confirmed in episode 6, the Stranger's helmet and gauntlets are made of a rare metal brought out of Star Wars Legends called cortosis. It is not only resistant to lightsabers like Mandalorian Beskar, but can actually temporarily short out lightsabers upon contact. It also seemingly now has the ability to prevent Jedi mind tricks / mind reading.
Which wasn't part of the original Legends stuff.
That's what I'm saying, is that seems to be a new functionality they've added.
But it worked
for his helmet.
What's interesting is I don't know if they said in extras or additional material if that was the case, or that's just people's observation of it. But in this, we'll talk about when we get to this episode, he mentions that when he puts that helmet on, it does that deprivation thing.
It's a sensory deprivation.
I think that has more to do with him not being able to read his mind than cortosis does. But if they came out and said cortosis does have kind of anti-force, an anti-force property to it, that's not outside of the realm of possibility with cortosis. And for people out there who are well, why don't they make everything out of cortosis? One, you're not. Are you about to pull that in?
It's a very rare ore.
It's a rare ore, and also you can't really make armor out of it, as we see in that episode. Despite its natural properties, it's not a very strong metal. The repeated physical contact of a lightsaber hilt hitting it is enough to make it break. So it's not a very strong metal to begin with. It just has special properties.
Yeah. The bit about it seems to block mind reading, I think is probably a little bit of people reading into the Stranger in that episode, say pointing to his helmet and saying, you can't read my mind now, can you, kind of thing. So I think it also seems to be drawing the comparisons to the Magneto helmet in X-Men stuff. So
I feel that might be a preemptive bias that people have because of the Magneto helmet.
Sure.
That would be my impression of it. But either way, I think it totally still works for cortosis. Giving it an additional anti-Jedi type feel to it is great. Big fan of them bringing it in, as I have been for I've been wanting them to bring cortosis into Bree bring it back into canon for a very long time.
Yep. Additionally, from this episode, the Stranger's lightsaber hilt we see briefly can be split into 2 shorter Shoto lightsabers with shorter blades. And then he just uses it to, dagger stab, triple stab Jackie.
So cool.
The Stranger employs a lightsaber technique known as Trakata.
Yep.
Wherein the wielder deactivates and reignites the saber mid-battle. I almost, as I was writing this trivia out, I almost put it in as fill in the blank and was going to quiz you to be all right, Cam, you're the fighting technique expert. But I was no point in doing that, especially knowing that you now jump in and check out the docs when we record.
But I mean, I tweeted out about that during the episode. I was when I was watching it, I was I can't believe combining cortosis with that lightsaber style is fucking brilliant. So it's so cool to see.
Yeah. Trackata was originally debuted in the Star Wars Dark Empire audio drama and is largely considered a forbidden lightsaber form in the eyes of the Jedi, fueling Yord's line about the stranger ignoring the rules of combat. As
Love it.
Yeah. But of course, the rules of combat perfectly fine with 7 Jedi facing off against one person. Yeah, that's not, that's not a violation of the rules of combat. As Sol and May, disguised as Osha, leave the planet, the local aliens that we see kind of at the little shipyard-esque place are playing a low-tech version of Dejarik, the hologram game made famous by Chewbacca and R2-D2 in A New Hope. When the stranger heals Osha at the end, we're getting a acknowledgement that force healing is not a brand new thing by the time we get to the sequel trilogy.
People who've thought that for years are dumb as hell.
Yeah.
And have never, you're not a real Star Wars fan if you think that, because guess what? Force healing's been in there for fucking ever.
Yeah.
God, people are so, I hate people so much.
Sure.
Fake Star Wars fans.
But as that moment is happening, we also hear Kylo Ren's theme playing, which they have very much come out and said, that is an intentional music cue that we put in there. Possibly echoing the idea that Osha and May are a true dyad like Kylo Ren and Rey were, or maybe, I've seen this as another theory kind of being floated around, the stranger is possibly the original inspiration or named Ren from the Knights of Ren.
Which would be an interesting retcon to the entire Knights of Ren. Granted, I will also put it out there, the Knights of Ren were a mystery box that J.J. Abrams totally fucked up.
Sure.
So...
yeah. What? No. The other thing, the thing I'll throw out there, because it especially plays fast and loose with canon-y things, is who was it? Christian Slater in one of the Lego Star Wars animated things. I think the Lego animated Summer Vacation or whatever it was that came out a couple years ago, plays a Knight of Ren that basically is the one that kind of recruits and kind of initiates Kylo Ren into the fold. And I don't remember if he was supposed to be Ren or not. But yeah.
For people who don't know, the Knights of Ren are not Jedi affiliated. They are completely, they're not Force affiliated.
Yeah.
They're a completely separate organization that are basically super space anarchists. They're all about causing as much chaos as possible because they believe that's the best way to be free.
Which also does fuel the stranger's line of you would call me a Sith, but
that's why it works.
I don't think of myself as a Sith.
That's why it works, man. That's why it works. Also, just the helmet definitely has evokes that
of course, yeah, the
Knight of Ren thing. For people who don't know, the reason why Kylo Ren is called Kylo Ren is because his full title is Kylo the Ren. He's referred to as the Ren by the other Rens, by the other Knights of Ren, because he's the most powerful of them, which means he's their leader, because their leader is dictated by pure strength, and only that.
Some trivia from episode 6, Teach/Corrupt. The unknown planet, as is blazoned on the screen, seems to share a lot of potential commonality with Octo from the sequel trilogy, where we meet up with a secluded Luke Skywalker. But it also may be Baldemnik from the Legends kind of canon of things, the site where Darth Plagueis killed his master while also holding stores of the rare Cortosis ore. Vernestra's problems with hyperspace that are referenced in the episode are a nod to the High Republic novels, where she would often receive visions during her hyperspace travel. And also we get our debut of Vernestra's lightsaber whip in live action. I mentioned that probably when we did kind of the first couple episodes that I think we had probably seen it in trailers and stuff. But
yeah, getting to see a light whip in action for the first time was really cool to see.
Yeah.
This is for people who are like, well, it's like you didn't read the expanded universe, because one of the first antagonists post the Empire, who is the Lady of the Sith. In the that canon is or that legend stuff is, well, it's just non-canon now, but does use the light whip. They introduced the light whip in the novels back in the 90s. Yeah. So once again, fake Star Wars fans.
I mean, not necessarily fake Star Wars fan so much as like I didn't know that, but I wouldn't consider myself a fake Star Wars fan just
No,
because I haven't read the bajillion,
that's fair.
you know,
I'm mostly
extended things, or
I
I don't
yeah.
have Wikipedia memorized.
That's fair. I'm mostly just like trying to be antagonistic towards gatekeeping people.
Yeah.
By gatekeeping the gatekeepers. There's no easier way to piss off people. But yeah, no, I like it. Here's the thing, like, it's great. I love that we got to see it. I love that it's purple. I love that she's an alien. I love that we get like this, like, there's such a great, like, we see way more alien Jedi right now, and that's so cool, man.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's what I have pulled in for trivia. So I figure we can go through just kind of episode by episode here. First talking about Night, and shout out to you for absolutely nailing the prediction of Khmer and like having basically identified all that stuff, whereas I was still the skeptic in our last episode. Especially because, yeah, as I think I said in that episode, well, if it doesn't end up being that, I'm gonna be extra disappointed. And your option was the only thing that seemed to make narrative sense. So hey, there you go. And also fun to see Khmer kind of like doing the full like deception, so much so, and like there's another thing that people were like, how the fuck wouldn't they have noticed that there was this strong Sith presence? And then like I love seeing people basically respond to that with like an image of a whole bunch of like prequel Jedi talking to Emperor or Senator Palpatine, like right across the table from them. It's like, really, you don't think they can kind of mask that from? Shut up.
Palpatine literally had like daily briefings with the Jedi.
Yeah.
And they never picked up on it. Like, that's the point of the rule of two. That's the point of the power of two, which, great nod to that. The power of two, getting like that is a detail for me that says, okay, he is a practitioner of the Sith.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he wants the power of two, that is like deep into the dark, like the Bane philosophy on the dark side. Love also his semantics, and it's just It was so good. It's so good. Let's get into this proper. Sorry.
Yeah, so yeah, we get this episode basically picking up immediately where we left off from day, going into night, and it's just a slaughter. The stranger immediately wipes out like all of the red shirts that we kind of expected were there just to be wiped out by this big bad, but then also starts picking off Jecki and Yord, characters who seemingly had been built up to be prominent roles and just kind of like main characters. So it was a fun subversion to the like everybody, all the good guys in Star Wars are safe.
Yep.
Like so shout out to that. And I mean, like, my probably favorite interaction in that episode is Soul like screaming she was a child, and then Khmer just like calmly saying, and you brought her here.
Yep.
like this is your fault. You enlisted children into your war, which obviously is also very fresh and reminiscent from Ahsoka, and like seeing in live action the thing that we probably just didn't like register as well, seeing it in like animation in the Clone Wars of like little Ariana Greenblatt is a general or a lieutenant or whatever in the Clone War army as a 11-year-old or whatever she's supposed to be
as a teenager. It's super fucked up. It's so fucked up, and I love that they're calling it like yeah, you brought her here on a dangerous mission in a place you didn't know anything about, and she died for it. Like, you brought her here. Like, it's so good. Also great about Sith getting into her mind, getting into his soul's mind. All of that just plays directly into it, and why like this is probably, I'm just going to say it right now, this might be the best depiction of a Sith-like character, if not a Sith proper, that we've seen since, like, fucking Palpatine on the throne. Like,
yeah, I think probably Maul in the, like, animated stuff gives it a run for its running money.
Yeah. For sure, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, definitely, I mean, yeah. Like, you also have somehow Palpatine Return basically just dismantling a lot of, like, good Palpatine stuff and just being like, God, that character is so fucking stupid now, and can't escape that memification. But yeah, I would say, like, I definitely love this interpretation and this like depiction of manipulative, remorseless. And I think their depiction is maybe strengthened a little bit by some of the other character depictions and motivations feeling a little like questionable or weak. Especially like in particular, if you think of where May ended episode 4, she was like, that's it. I'm giving up. My sister's alive. I'm gonna walk away from all this. I'm gonna, turn myself in, and we'll be together or whatever. And like immediately abandons that and like tries to reunite with Osha, and then like impersonates Osha to go, face off against Soul. And it's just like, where did the motivation go? Like,
oh, it's because her master showed up and killed the Wookiee.
Yeah,
that's that. When she sees that, it's like, oh shit, everything's off the table. Like everything's.
Yeah, I don't know. It felt more contrived,
sure,
than like supported narratively, I think.
I think
by contrast, like I think the Stranger is a far more interesting and compelling, like
100%
character, because I don't see that lack of like, or I don't see those contradictions in character rationale or anything like that. I see this character was, and I think that he's kind of come out in interviews or something and talked about the idea of like he plays Khmer as a little bit of a Jack Sparrow type, and he's just kind of being a little like sillier and goofier, so that like when you see the turn and like you see how ruthless he is, and then in episode 6 how like manipulative and
like deeply philosophical, just
all that, I think just makes it a far more interesting depiction, as opposed to bad guy is bad, evil is evil. Like, but you also still get him slaughtering a whole bunch of people in some of the best action that they've probably had in some time.
I'm trying to think if there's anything. I think like the thing about the Mandalorian that like helps elevate its action is that it's like shootouts for the most part.
Yeah, I think there was some interesting action in like Ahsoka, between Ahsoka and either the kind of Sith characters or not the Sith, but like the Dark Jedi or whatever, and the Night Mother woman. I think they had some interesting stuff. Like Obi-Wan might have had an interesting fight or two in there, but like I think the scale of this one, I think, is certainly more engaging and also just more like visceral, because it was nobody's safe.
Yeah, nobody's safe. It was great. Yord shows up. He has this big damn hero moment with like some cortosis, and he's using it, and he's like, "Aha! I've disabled your lightsaber." And the Stranger is just like, "Okay, catch these hands," and just takes him and snaps his neck. Unceremonious. Yord is this character that we've had for like 5 episodes, for 4.5 episodes, and he's been built up as like, yeah, he's like cool. We all like him. The Yord Horde exists. Like, we all love Yord. And unceremoniously, body dumped on the ground. Just such a tone for, it was like, I don't know if anybody else, because I predicted who it was, and I was right. And so I didn't have that kind of like quote unquote letdown moment of, this is the character we saw before.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of other people be like, it was so telegraphed. I'm like, okay, well, they tricked me. It fooled me.
Yeah.
I didn't immediately jump to that. Like, despite, there being obvious signs of like, he's the only other like face we've met, but it's also it could still be a brand new person that we haven't been introduced to or something.
Yeah. And that's the point. That's why it was interesting, even if you saw it coming. Like, I saw it coming, and I made that prediction, but I still thought it was interesting. Because you do have that kind of like that detail about it. The thing that, like I mentioned last time, the thing that made me like think, I think this is the turn, this is the twist, is when he mentions, like, he makes it clear that Khmer, the role that he's playing, is not another Sith acolyte. It's not another acolyte like May is. At that moment, I was like, then why did he say something about the Sith philosophy, about their peace being a lie? Like, why did he say that? And I'm like, and it was in a moment that felt called to its attention. I'm like, that is the thing that like is setting off the warning sign in my head that I think this is the bad guy. And then I love to see alternative lightsaber forms show up. They really are bringing them out in kind of spades for this one. But we get a really, really, really cool moment of being able to turn your lightsaber into twin shotos to, like, this guy is so prepared to face off against Jedi. And it reminds me a lot of Maul against Qui-Gon. Well, why did Qui-Gon die? It's like, because he was facing a Sith assassin, which, like, you have the best defense against the Sith assassin is to know that a Sith assassin is a Sith assassin. And, you know, Sith assassin murdered a 60-plus-year-old man. So it'd be what it'd be. That being said, like, it's like Maul. Maul is this, you see this double-sided lightsaber. Why does he use it? Because it's situational. He can use one side or the other, or anything like that can happen. It can get cut in half and still half of it work. Mm-hmm. All of this stuff is still a big piece of that kind of like that utility that an assassin needs to have, that a Sith needs to have.
I grew up like playing with my like double-bladed Maul lightsaber all the time, and I would like twist the one end off and turn it into like two sabers.
Yeah.
And just have fun with that. And then when you eventually get to do that in Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, it's like, hell yeah, this is the way to go.
Jedi Survivor's introduction of several different lightsaber forms is what made that game work so well for me. Because yeah, okay, well, let me do a shorter lightsaber blade, but I'll have a blaster. Or let me do twin blades. Let me do a long one and a short one. Like, the entire complexity of that was just always so cool. And getting to see this kind of implemented in a really cool live action way has been awesome. I have just been really, really impressed by it. And like, I'm also just gonna be completely honest. Like, those arms can snap my neck any day.
Like a little bit more so when we get into episode 6, but yeah, I definitely found myself thinking, Star Wars has introduced the biggest Star Wars thirst trap since Hutt Slayer Leia. With Kamir out there just going for a little nude swim.
He was covered in like stuff, and that's a hot spring, and he's in there and he's washing off, and you know, and he mentions, he goes, you know, if you don't want to join me, let me get my clothes at least. And it's like, listen, tasteful edits, tasteful cuts, and also like nudity isn't seen that way in the Star Wars universe, folks. Yep. It's just not.
Did you? I mean, I feel like the clothes, or like the most sexual thing we got prior to this was
Yord with his steaming his outfit with his shirt off. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I don't view that as a sexual moment. I was thinking the kind of like morning after of the characters in Andor in like one of the first episodes.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
His like old girlfriend kind of thing, and the guy that ends up like betraying Cassian.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, you know, her just getting out of bed basically, having to put her clothes back on.
Sex happens in Star Wars, folks.
Yeah.
Not everybody stays celibate like Luke.
But yeah, I don't know if you saw the video making the rounds of like, you should watch those scenes with like the audio description on or whatever. And it's basically just talking about, you know, the stranger, you know, seductively disrobes or whatever.
It was seductive. It was great.
Yeah.
Big fan. Those arms, oof. When he's snapping Yord's neck, it's like, I would give so much just to be there in that moment, because it's like grimy fight, like post-fight dirty. He's been, you know, flying through dirt and dust in the air. Like, it's hot. It's so fucking hot. Him massacring all those Jedi, so fucking hot.
All right, you're a psychopath.
Me and every other woman on Twitter.
Sure.
Sorry, every woman on Twitter.
Yeah.
And all the gay guys on Twitter
and
too.
many men on Twitter.
Yeah. Those who saw that and were like, wow.
Mm-hmm. Any other moments from the first episode you want to call out?
Yeah, I really, really, really enjoyed the way that that how OSHA figures out how to get rid of the stranger.
Yeah. The use of like the giant bug creatures and basically sacrificing Pip to it. which then gets a little bit undercut with like, oh, I mean, yeah, obviously he was just a droid, but the fact that he just can kind of get like put back together with a different base in the next episode, it's like, all right, whatever.
But yeah, like I loved a lot of that aspect of it. I love that. Oh, he finds Osha. So what does he do? Like, what's he gonna do with her? And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like there still continues to be some mystery about the stranger that they're just giving us more and more crumbs, and I like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think it calls back to like a moment that we saw with him as Khmer of like the immediate like recognition that this isn't May when Osha goes in like pretending to be May, of like, I think right there you see his like little recognition, and then now in hindsight we can be like, oh, he's eyeing her up as a potential replacement for May. Like,
Yep.
maybe you're the one I want to, you know, put my weight behind instead, because you know, May has clearly already like exposed me, as he very much says kind of in these episodes, like, anybody who's seen my face needs to die.
Yeah, anybody who's seen my face needs to die. But on top of that, also, the way that when Osha asks him, like, so what's your plan? And he goes, well, I've made a mistake. Like, I clearly made a mistake with May by keeping her far from me and not like bringing her closer into his confidence. He recognizes his failure, which is such a cool thing. Also, I love that he lets her assume that his lightsaber wounds are from his Jedi master.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, there's such good subterfuge and just like letting her follow her own lead on stuff. It's so fucking good.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how much more of like his backstory we get, because he also, like, despite looking like a very young man, seems to be implying that he is much older than we think. Given that, like, oh, like, when was he a Padawan? Oh, a long time ago, kind of thing, or whatever he says.
Dude, I'm gonna just tell you right now, if they're like, by the way, this guy's like our Bane, that'd be sick. I'd fucking lose it.
Yeah, it'd definitely be
Although I prefer not to, because Bane being an alien does help the kind of like point of Bane. That being said,
yeah, trying to think, I mean, the standout stuff for me in episode 5, in addition to like the cool stranger badass moments, is just like the combat in general. I think they do a great job of like giving us a bunch of different versions of it. It's like, as soon as Jackie starts to face off against him, I'm like, you're a Padawan in training. I don't think this is going to end well for you, but you're also one of our main characters. So I'm like immediately like, how are they going to write around that? And how are they going to, like, and then they don't let her survive.
Nope. I thought with the moment she pulled out 2 lightsabers, I was like, aha, Attack of the Clones. She's going to lose a hand.
Yeah.
And then she doesn't. She loses her life.
Yeah. I did like kind of Kelnaka's lightsaber kind of coming into the fold there, and like both parties kind of ending up using it a little bit. But yeah, it was the like, I do remember thinking at the very beginning of the episode, I'm like, what a fucking cop-out that Soul's just nowhere to be found. And they still don't ever do a good job of like explaining why he wasn't there at the beginning of that, and like why like he just kind of shows up at a moment to save Osha later. I think that's like the weakest part of the episode for me.
I don't recall that, so I will have to give you the benefit of the doubt on that. I don't remember that.
I mean, it's like Osha is, or I think it was Osha.
Osha wakes up after getting knocked down,
yeah,
and the fight has already like left their area. For me, I just thought it was in the chaos of the fight in the jungle.
Yeah, it's like the fight picks up, and it's the stranger facing off against like a few of the red shirts, and they get struck down. And so immediately it's like, okay, well, where are our main people? Like, why aren't they in the mix? And then we do get Yord and Jackie kind of like joining into the fight. And then I feel like Soul, it's the moment where the stranger goes to throw, and I don't remember who he's throwing the lightsaber at. I think it was Osha, like as she's like running away or something like that. And the stranger throws his lightsaber at her, and like out of nowhere Soul comes and like bats it away, and like that's the first time we see him in the episode, and it's like, where the fuck have you been? like half your crew's dead because you were who knows where for all this. And so yeah, like if it is like supposed to be, oh, he was, you know, thrown aside in the chaos or whatever, the fact that like they don't give us that and they really just have him come in for like a quick hero moment is like, I don't like that blocking of everything. Now that said, if they, I know I've seen one of the theories going around of like maybe Soul is the Stranger's master, or you know, or something like that as well, and you know, deep undercover, or the idea that maybe Vernestra was Soul's master or something like that. Who knows? But it was still a like, in what they've shown us so far, I that was the biggest thing that bothered me about that first episode was like, okay, the person that's supposed to be leading this and clearly the most experienced of this crew just shows up real late to the fight party, and what's going on there and why. Apart from it being like, oh, narratively, obviously we needed to give him some plot armor since we're going to kill so many other people and he's going to be the sole survivor here. Like, so let's minimize the amount of conflict and moments that he's facing off. I did, that said, I do like the moment where like he has the Stranger beat and you know, barring a call out from OSHA of like, hey, don't kill him, like as the lightsaber basically comes up against his neck, like OSHA's sympathy or humanity or like, hey, you can't become them, is the only thing that saves the Stranger's life here, I guess.
Yep.
Which of course is, you know, the like, it's the old problem of like, okay, yeah, you shouldn't kill the guy, but also like if you're fighting for your own life and that's the only way this ends, like you probably got to like, that would have been the right call here in this, like, you know, brief moment of war that you've stumbled yourself into. But so be it. Cause yeah, it is the like, and the Stranger kind of plays with this too. Of like, you fight an unarmed man, like you have been. So yeah, of course we would. Like we can't just play by your rules, or we can't play by our rules. If it's the
tolerance of intolerancy.
It's
paradox.
Bringing it into another kind of like parallel to what we're seeing kind of in the world today is the Supreme Court ruling being like, yeah, Trump's completely immune, blah, blah, blah. And then Biden coming out and saying like, I'm not going to abuse this power. I think the Supreme Court has made the wrong ruling, but I'm not going to abuse this power. And then somebody quote tweeting that and being like, all right, so you have a guy basically saying, I'm going to play by the rules that never existed to begin with.
Yep.
Cool.
100%. 100% that.
It's that vibe of like, you're in war. There to Yord's line earlier of like, he doesn't obey the rules of combat. There are no rules of combat. You're trying to kill each other. And if you don't see that, then you've probably lost, or you
pretty much
will absolutely lose.
That,
and certainly you absolutely lost. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, shout out to OSHA, you know, shout out to OSHA because they're the character that deploys this, but I guess it's also more of a shout out to the writers for giving the Stranger this just massive bloodlust and then figuring out a way to satisfactorily write them out so they can't kill everybody in this moment, and you have a few more episodes to go where we'll maybe have another showdown or something. But anything else from that episode, or moving into episode 6? That
I think we're going to move into episode 6.
Yeah. So I'll say episode 6, like I watched it and I haven't gone back and rewatched it, but it ended and I was like, I feel like nothing happened. Like the episode ends and we get like the little like stinger of OSHA then going and putting on the helmet, and I'm just like, what a, like, not only was like that little like coda of the episode like a weird little like that didn't hit for me, but it was also like right before that, when I'm like, oh, the episode's like ending now, I guess. It was kind of a like I with about a minute to go or something, like I pushed pause to see how much time was left in the episode, and I was like, oh, it's almost done, because I was like, I feel like I haven't like watched anything apart from a very sexy stranger and some like philosophical stuff. But I think maybe just the complete 180 from all the action in the last one, this one felt particularly underwhelming for me. But I also recognize that like maybe on a second viewing I'll appreciate it more, or something like that. But yeah, for the immediate kind of aftermath, I was just like, oh, I was like very underwhelmed by that episode. What about you? I mean, you clearly were very thirsty for the stranger. So
Yeah. For me, it was really more about I think it feels a bit off balance, one, because time wise, it doesn't like they're playing with time in a way that isn't very clear.
Sure.
And doesn't play well with each other. Like your scenes with the stranger and OSHA.
It seems like it seems like one of those cases where like a lot of time seems to be passing with OSHA and the stranger, but Soul and May are just on a very long hyperspace ride.
There's that. It's very much the episode, like Last Jedi issue, where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, there's a
Yeah.
chase going on, but we're gonna somehow we're gonna get like a couple weeks worth of training between Rey and Luke, and
Yeah.
it's like,
But also Vernestra is able to make it from Coruscant to the site of the slaughter, and kind of
Yeah.
investigate that. And yeah, so it very much is. I hadn't thought about it in that context, but yeah, I think that's maybe something that's like rubbing up against me the wrong way. Is like,
it doesn't play with time well, and it doesn't respect the audience's attention to what's going on. What's happening with Ocean the Stranger, I feel, is far more interesting, but that's also because we're talking about philosophy, betrayal. We get the reveal, like the stranger's so good about getting into people's heads, he gets into Osha's head and he just pulls it out of her. Like, why did you leave the Jedi? Why'd you leave? And then she reveals, well, I failed. Like, basically, I flunked out of being a Jedi.
mm-hmm.
And that's what he needs to, like, he wants her to confront that, but he wants her to confront it on his terms, accessing the Force his way. It's this great gaslighting manipulative tactic that he's using, and it's freaking fantastic. I love it. From getting a villain who is that badass, but then is also that, like, how do I get Osha to consider my stuff? By basically being as non-threatening as possible. At any point in time, he could have used the Force to like snap her neck, do anything. She knows. She saw him murder a bunch of Jedi. He can kill her at any time. So why is he doing this? Why does he make a line of like, okay, you can either want to go get to the ship now, or wait till the tide goes out and then you can still get to the ship. But if you're hungry, we can go eat. And it's very much like this. I'm gonna say it's very Yoda-esque in a certain way of like using somebody's perception of you to get them off balance to then bring them into like the education you want them to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Or I mean, Palpatine too, with Anakin specifically.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It's, as you were talking about that, I'm like, yeah, like I feel like we've seen Palpatine be that manipulative, but we didn't see how he brought Maul into the fold. We don't really see how he brought Dooku into the fold.
Maul gets brought into the fold by being bought as a child out of slavery.
I mean, again, we don't see that.
We don't see it.
You've read it in some like other extraneous materials or whatever, but it's more the, oh yeah, no, we really see Palpatine's manipulation with Anakin in particular, probably most episode 3, but
episode 3, but also throughout the Clone Wars.
Obviously, especially through the Clone Wars, where they could kind of retcon a lot of that stuff or back into it. But yeah, I think it is that element of like, you're free to go. I'm not going to keep you here. Like, you're not my prisoner. Like the Jedi probably treated you is very much the like
He mentions that the Jedi arrested you for a crime you didn't commit.
Yeah.
Like, look at what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. He very, very sneaky snake.
Also, we get to see his cortosis deposit that he has there. That's like, he has like a vein of cortosis in the rock there. That's cool. Mm-hmm. Lots of really cool stuff about like, what's this, like, how does this hermit live, basically?
Yeah.
We see him like doing the repairs on the mask himself. And once again, it brings up like, yes, this is cortosis. Cortosis is like, you don't make an armor out of cortosis because a actual physical weapon would absolutely cleave through it and break through it, no problem. If you were to use like a slug thrower in Star Wars, you could easily get through cortosis. Also, there's not a good chance that cortosis could deflect laser bolts. So like it's just not a good armor unless you're fighting Jedi. Like that's the only real reason to use it. And on top of that, it's so rare.
Yeah. What do you think? Slash, do you think we'll get an answer to his scar? Do you think that's some like Sith lightning? Do you think that's?
I think it's Sith like. I think I think his backstory is he got that talented at fighting against people with lightsabers because he had to fight with a lightsaber like that, like life and death situations against a master. There is a long history of Sith masters with their apprentices, like not really holding back. And if you die, you failed as an apprentice. But if you survive, that's the thing. Why? How does he learn force healing? Because he was so close on the verge of death, he had to heal himself, which is how most people learn force healing in Star Wars.
Survival of the fittest.
Pretty much, like that is the power of two. Like the point of, for people who don't know, the rule of two and the power of two is based off this idea that Darth Bane believed that for multiple reasons, having multiple dark side or just force users in general was bad. Bane thought that the force was somehow like a resource, so it was not infinite. And the more people you had pulling on it took too much attention from the force. So if you consolidated the force into just two individuals, a master and apprentice, a master who yearns to pass on but dominate, and an apprentice who yearns to learn from and essentially overcome and inherit that position of master. The master is meant to be a master, not a teacher, a master. There is cruelty, there is punishment, there is brutality to it. It is a true, like, that is the point of the apprenticeship within it. And the point of an apprentice is to eventually overcome and kill their master, because if they can kill their master, then that means that they have overcome them. How powerful of a Sith can you be if your apprentice kills you? Well, that must mean your apprentice is, and it's the idea of like basically Sith users throughout, because of the rule of two, have constantly been upping their game as far as like their abilities and their skill sets and their ability of subterfuge and, assassination, because of this constant conflict between the master and apprentice.
It's the Mauler twins in Invincible.
Exactly.
It's the like, yeah. All right, yeah, whichever one is the better of us is going to keep us around. Yeah. Survival of the fittest, obviously.
It really is.
At its bare bones.
It is. And it's so interesting to see that, because it is like, that is like, we see the success of that process. We see that success because Palpatine eventually destroys the Jedi Order, which is the goal of Darth Bane. Darth Bane wanted to destroy the Jedi, but knew that to accomplish that, you have to pull the pillars that support the Jedi, which is the Republic, away from the Jedi, and then watch the Jedi collapse in on themselves.
Yeah, we even get a little nod here in episode 6 when we cut back to Coruscant and Vernestra's like getting some like report from the Senate or something of like Senate overreach and basically senators kind of being a little greedy for power and stuff. It's like, oh, hey, there's that like corruption of the Senate we're going to see really in full force in 100 years time. Oh yeah,
but for sure, but also full on like, oh, well, he knows he's not going to find anything, but this gives him an opportunity to kind of like grow his profile. Don't worry about it. There's nothing you have to hide. And of course we know that there is a lot to hide. Mm-hmm. This like, and it's great because it speaks to kind of the, I almost said depravity, but it's really just like the debauchery of the, like for a monastic order to have assumed a martial position in the galaxy. Of course there's going to be failures and other things like that. And if you're honest with the Senate, they'll disband it or take that away from you. So what do? You hide things under the rug. And like eventually the roosters come home to roost, and that's definitely going to be like a setup for this. Like we're going to start seeing that kind of like disillusion of the idea of like Jedi marshals, traversing the galaxy on patrols. All this stuff is going to go away. And we're starting to see kind of like the mechanisms that will end up leading to that in the future, which is cool. It's so cool that we get these little nods, these little pinpoints that really do bring out and flesh out kind of what we see later in 125 years.
Mm-hmm. So the other kind of arc we get in this episode is May on like as OSHA on the ship with Soul. And again, this is probably the one that works the least for me.
This is the one that I think works badly.
Yeah.
It does not work because it is in a weird place within the time frame of the episode. And also it is unclear what anybody's fucking goal is.
Yeah.
I don't know what the fuck is happening. Of like, whose goal is what? And the worst offender, the absolute worst offender, the fucking otter hound.
Yeah, Basil
is fucking worthless.
Yeah.
Basil's fucking worthless.
That's yeah, I don't like I just did like it does that thing where it's like, okay, I feel like you're trying to go for like an Ewok moment here or something.
Ewok, he's gonna be the thing that like shows that May is actually May or get like that, and we don't get any of that.
Yeah, no, we get a little slapsticky like, I'm gonna attack you and gonna kick your shin, and then a little robot's gonna spit oil in your face, and I'm gonna run away.
Also, full on, people are like, oh, well, maybe May's good. It's like, no, May reset a droid back to their factory settings, which is, first off, a fucking hate crime. Let's be real here.
Yeah.
Every time they did it to C-3PO, that's a fucking hate crime.
Yeah.
Like, that's straight up, like, that is a straight up, like, you are forcing, like, the dehumanization of droids, because they're droids. Like, once again, the allegory of droids being, like, the the slaves of the galaxy carries over here. Oh, you want to be persnippety? Cool. Reset your factory settings. You have no memories now.
Yeah.
You have no memories anymore. It's fucking disgusting. And I first off, Bail Organa. Like, fuck you, man. You deserve to get blown up.
Okay.
Maybe not. Maybe that, because that's also a war crime.
Yeah.
Genocide, the genocide of an entire planet. That's fair.
That's a little rough.
Yeah.
But yeah, the one of the little trivia things was like, oh, like when Pip's, factory stuff gets reset, the lights go from white to red. So maybe now he can read Sith like C-3PO's when C-3PO gets, factory reset in the Rise of Skywalker nonsense.
Dude, oh, fuck me.
Yeah.
For anybody who's like, hey, what do these guys think about Rise of Skywalker? They seem to be maybe they liked it. It's like, nah, go watch that podcast we did on it for Summer of Star Wars, man. We fucking hated it. We eviscerated that movie so badly.
I mean, it's one of those, again, I will stand by the 7 I gave it, I think, after reviewing it initially on post movie, post seeing it, of it's still fun. There's still a lot of, fast action trademarks and stuff. So it's it's good, but yeah, it is nowhere near the highs of Star Wars. And I'm also not going to be I will defend it enough to say I think it's good, but if people are it is a 1 out of 10 movie, I'm not going to refute you. I will fully understand your perspective on that.
I agree with you. There's a lot of fun stuff. It's just that movie to me is a 5 or 6 out of 10. It's just, it's really low.
Yeah.
That's a D movie for me. There's enough in there to have been hey, it wasn't a complete waste of time watching that movie, but there's stuff about that movie that just really just needles me the wrong way.
Yeah. I mean, it's the epitome of the combination of that and Force Awakens are what really turned me around, and J.J. Abrams doesn't know what the fuck he's doing.
Nope.
and I have no patience for it anymore. Probably mostly with Rise of Skywalker just being okay, so you are actively embracing and rewarding all of the worst fans that came out from Last Jedi by being no, Rey's parentage does really matter, and here's a fucking medal for Chewbacca 60 years later. All that bullshit. Don't
get me wrong. I think the fact that she goes to hug Rey when Chewbacca's standing right there is a little fucked up.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's J.J. Abrams' fault.
Exactly. That was J.J. fucked that up in the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
J.J. Anyway, enough about Jay.
Yeah.
The fact that he calls Finn and Poe soulmates, but then says, but they're just friends. Fucking die, J.J. Not really. I'm getting really hyperbolic right now, so I'm going to turn myself down a bit, but I'm going to go ahead. Okay. No, like, so back to this
let's
episode.
factory reset you, Cameron.
Yeah, let's factory reset me a bit here. No, I think that the
But
idea
the
part
May
doesn't work.
stuff, none of that works for me. Like, I appreciate, I guess, like, the one thing I appreciate is that Saul initially doesn't see what seems to be pretty obvious because he's dealing with the, grief of his whole kind of squad getting slaughtered,
Including his Padawan.
But I do appreciate that, like, he pretty quickly catches on to the idea that, like, May is May, when she specifically asks, like, what haven't you told me about that night? Which we already saw him kind of have, like, a moment with Osha of, like, I'll tell you everything soon. So, like, it would have been fully within, like, I guess, like, acceptable storytelling for him to still be so overwhelmed by grief that he wouldn't have, like, picked up on that and would have just been like, yes, I did tell you I was going to tell you, what we haven't talked about. But, like, I think he sees that, like, the aggressiveness with which she is asking for it is outside of what we have come to expect, at least from Osha.
It's the wrong emotional beat that betrays May. May's aggressiveness and her anger betray her in that moment because Osha would be more curious and concerned than aggressive and upset.
Yeah. I mean, it's also Osha would also be grieving
for Yord and
Jackie and everybody else that maybe she didn't know, but, like, she still would have been grieving for the loss of life, in a way that May clearly did not.
Also, I really appreciate that they show that Soul and Osha are very similar in that, even though Soul hides it, he loves the people around him so much. Like, Jackie's dead. Like, and it got brought up earlier. Like, he ends up training younglings because, like, he over connects and overcommits himself to Padawans and other stuff like that. So he's kind of, like, on the bench as far as that goes. We get that kind of, like, a clue of that. Like, you care too much about people. Like, you believe in Osha, even though you haven't seen her in forever. You don't know what she's done, but you believe in her. Like, why? Well, because I trained her. Like, I know her, and it's this level of, like. Now, if you had asked me a couple episodes ago, I would have said it's like that belief in good people. Now, it's more so that Osha is more of a daughter to him than a Padawan. And that is very clear when the stranger gets in Osha's head and says, you killed the people. It's like, what? People that will never love you as much as you love them. People who detach themselves and keep them from caring about you. Like, really driving home that, like, you went from a family that loved you to a group of people who claim to be your family, but then don't act like your family at all.
Yeah. The Jedi are every company that tells you, hey, everybody, we're a family here, and then a week later fires you.
100%. All of a sudden, by the way, we're a family here, which is why we're going to lay off 10% of the company.
Yeah.
They're not family anymore. It's 100% that way, and you feel that, because it's like, well, why did Osha fail? And it's like, well, Osha didn't, and they kind of, like, mentioned it a little bit. Osha failed because she can't detach herself from people.
Yeah.
She can't detach herself from the love she feels for other people and other beings.
Yeah, she still wanted, like, revenge for what happened to her family.
For her family. But also, if you notice, the pip droid's not like some advanced droid like a C-3PO or something that's going to come out, 100 plus years later. It's a tool droid. Like, it is very rudimentary.
Yeah.
But she invested in that. She invested in her relationship with it, which is why that factory reset feels so, like, painful, because Pip was a real person to Osha. And it's really messed up that May just, like, factory resetted him, so he's just another tool.
Yeah.
Like, he had personality. He was Pip, and it was a thing that Osha cared about him and asked for his forgiveness before she attached him to the stranger to save everybody. Like, it was a very fair, like, moment that this is a show of who Osha is as a character.
Yeah.
And
it was a sacrifice that she was making.
Yeah. Shout out to that call out of, like, your problem with the Jedi is that they'll never love you as much as you love them. Like, Jackie, who would have just, like, abandoned you and left you anyway? Like, why are you?
Yeah, why are you mourning her?
Yeah, why are you mourning people who didn't let themselves care about you? Like, that's the kicker. Yord was your friend. Yord kept himself from being your friend.
Yeah, Yord arrested you for a crime you didn't commit, as we kind of touched on with that line earlier.
And even if that was the case, and even though like he straight up like decided, hey, we're not actually friends. You're a former Jedi like trainee. Like you were a youngling, you were trained, but you were a Padawan, but you never became a Jedi and you left the Order. Like, we're not friends. We were, it's the whole thing of like, oh, we're friends. It's like, no, we were coworkers, but we're not friends. Mm-hmm. And it's like very big vibes on that. Yeah.
What do you think of the, going back to the Vernestra C plot of this episode, where they get there, they find the bodies and kind of piece together, they think Soul is rogue, that rather than like this report of, a Sith agent or something like that. They think Soul has done this and is basically like on the run or whatever.
If you don't know about the dark side users out there, the most, like, if you mentioned it last night when we were talking about stuff about Occam's razor, the most plausible answer is the most likely, right? So
yeah, I feel like enough about the previous like stuff so far though feels like it's been like it feels like it's been established that there is like a threat outside of Soul, like the Soul was chasing down a threat, so it feels weird that they would immediately go from like, okay, well, we don't see the threat that they were chasing, so it must have been Soul who just turned on everybody, and because it was also the thing, like as they start doing that investigating, I'm like, oh cool, they're gonna piece together what happened here. They're gonna see Jecky's got like 3 holes in her, and they're gonna see like Yord's neck has been snapped and stuff like that, and they're gonna figure out like, oh, somebody did this with a lightsaber, and yeah, I guess there is an Occam's razor component of like, well, the person we don't see here is Soul, so I guess he must have, but it's you're only returning here because Soul sent out like the distress call, so that's the whole other aspect of it.
There's a couple of things about this, and I'm gonna hit them one by one here. One, we saw that while there is a trust for Soul from his previous work in the past, there is a deep concern about his mental state from his superior and other Jedi. They're concerned about his mental state.
I mean, now he's the sole survivor of the crew from that early planet. Yeah.
Yep. 2, there is already like a question about the fact that Soul says, I need to turn myself into the High Council. What is this conspiracy that happened on, like, it was already raised by, I keep on forgetting her name, but it's the Jedi Master Green.
Vernestra.
Vernestra brought up, like, is there something you're not telling me about that planet, Soul? What happened there? Like, so there's already concerns about that. Like, there's a lot of evidence that is piled up throughout the series so far to show that there is a deep concern for Soul's, at least for a time, his mental well-being. Mm-hmm. And now we get an elevation of that as, well, Jecky's dead. Yord is dead. The strike team is all dead. They were killed by somebody who not only was who used a lightsaber, but was powerful. Mm-hmm. Who was strong enough to take on all of them and kill them. Including, and their opinion of that is also Master Kelnaka. Yeah. There's a lot of different avenues that she could be going down, and none of them are going to be like, oh, because who said, oh, well, there's a master? It was Soul who said that there was a master. Nobody else confirmed the existence of a master. Yeah. It was Soul. Well, this also can lead to a very far-stretched conclusion, but still a reasonable one to lead to is, what if Soul knew May survived?
Yeah.
And trained her?
I mean, there's also the, like, even if Vernestra doesn't think that Soul is the culprit, with the Senate breathing down your neck.
Exactly. You need to find
putting this on Soul gets it, sweeps it under the rug and gets it out of your hair.
You blame it on Soul. You bring up this like event that happened on this planet 15 years ago. You be like, this is what was happening. And we've neutralized the threat. Like, that's an entire possibility of how this ends. And so we get the Sith slinking back into the darkness because the only person who now knows that there's a Sith, or that the word Sith was ever mentioned, is Soul. And what if Soul dies or something happened? Like, these are the things that are reasonable about why we, like, people are like, can't believe the Sith were supposed to be high. We don't. Blah, blah, blah. This is your explanation for that.
That's going back to, everybody freaking out because Ki-Adi-Mundi says the Sith have been, extinct for a millennium. But if he knew about this, it's like, well, nobody is confirming that this, enemy force is a Sith to him. But
also, May never used a lightsaber in any of her assassinations.
Yeah.
Also, she's a confirmed daughter of, a Force coven. There's reason around why people wouldn't assume she's a Sith.
Mm-hmm.
Or why she has a Soul's the one who starts putting that together and is confirmed by the stranger. Well, semi-confirmed by the stranger.
Yeah. If anything, it's like, okay, as far as Ki-Adi-Mundi knows, it's like, hey, a bounty hunter's out here and has our number. That's bad too, but it's not Sith. A
renegade Force user's out there killing Jedi, assassinating Jedi that she probably and also, they're all the people who were on her planet when her home was burned to the ground. Maybe there's something we should be looking into.
The other thing about it that drives me nuts on how overreactive stupid fucking people are is okay, even if it is even if Ki-Adi-Mundi knows that it's a Sith, you can still justify that line in the prequels by just being he believes his own lie, or he's perpetuating that lie because it's easier than confronting the truth, kind of thing.
or he's old and
sure,
he's millennia, and somebody could be well, century. Oh, sorry, century. Could have done. We could do that. We can retcon that. Anything. Listen, this is a show about space wizards with laser swords. I'm sorry, you shouldn't take it that seriously. I do, because I'm weird and crazy, and I assume you are too. Not you, Trevor. I know you're not that weird and crazy. I'm referring to the fans out there.
I mean, I am, but not about this.
No.
I'm weird and crazy about Disney shit.
That is accurate.
Which it does technically include Disney. Star Wars. So
yep. No, I think that this is really just such a great. Yeah, the weakest part of this last episode is definitely the Soul May plot. It seems plotting. It doesn't have it has a weird place within the kind of internal structure of story, the time of storytelling that they're using. And then on top of that, this honestly could have been part of a different episode and would have worked a lot better. But it's not. It is the episode that we have. So for me, that is a bit of a dip on that. But the other parts about it are very intriguing, and I'm very interested in it. And it ends, I think, on a good note.
Yeah, I'll be curious when all is said and done, if there is something deeper that we're supposed to be taking away from the fact that half these episodes are this/this, and then others are here's the title. For me right now, my hypothesis is, okay, Lost Found, Revenge Justice are the first couple episodes where May and Osha are very distinct entities and getting their own lessons. And so one of those is supposed to apply to them. And then we get into their flashback story of Destiny, where it's the two of them together getting the same lesson. Then Day and Night being two more episodes where, again, they're now brought together, even if they're not by the end of Day, by the end of Day they're not, but they're
by end of night they are.
They're circling the same planet kind of thing, or they're circling the same. I mean, yeah, they're within yards of each other kind of thing. So I think it's when their stories come together, we get a singular title for the episode, and then when they kind of split apart and go their separate ways again, we're getting these two splits. So yeah, in this we've got maybe this idea that Soul is trying to teach May and the stranger is trying to corrupt Osha. Maybe that's what the takeaway is.
Maybe the corrupt is what we're seeing with the Jedi, and with there's a lot of a lot of strings you can pull from these episode titles, because they are a little on the nose as far as I don't want to say they're generic. They're themed obviously for what they're doing, but it's also very much you could pull a lot of strings out of any of these episode titles. But if there's something more concrete we get by the end, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Or ultimately that's going to be something that I think somebody would have to ask in an interview or something. But yeah. All right. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, my final thoughts on the Acolyte so far is I was already really happy with what we got through episodes 1 through 3. 4 is like, I'm like, okay, we're getting really interesting now. 5 for me is really where this show has cemented itself as one of the best that Disney Plus has done for Star Wars. The build up to episode 5, and then kind of the like not the smoothest landing we get in episode 6 from the episode 5 conflict, but it's good enough that it's making me very interested in what we see going forward more than anything right now. To the point where like I didn't want to watch this late at night on a Wednesday or on a Tuesday for that reason. I waited till like Wednesday during the day to watch it, and it was well worth it because I was fully awake and alert for it. Yeah, this is just it continues to be very impressive. I'm a very big fan of what we have going for it, and just the cast continues to be great. I will say, actually, the worst part about Night, the episode Night, is the fact that we get that really awkward scene of May and Ausha together in a scene, and it's like, yep, this is it is difficult as hell to make a shot like this work.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit. For me, the weirdness is more so like the stranger gets pulled away, Soul gets knocked out, and the two are there in the forest where everybody's been doing the fighting, and then they just awkwardly like leave and go to a different location to have their confrontation.
Yeah,
like reunion scene that feels like a reshoot or something like that of like, well, we needed to bring these two together in a more isolated space or where there isn't like a body on the ground or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, like that was the weird bit. Whereas I mean, yeah, whenever you have yeah, we saw this a lot in like Moon Knight of like an actor acting against themselves. You're always going to have like, one camera over the shoulder of a back, seeing kind of the face, and you're going to cut to the kind of the reverse angle. But you see that in like a lot of just 2-person scenes. And hey, spoilers for how movies are made. In a lot of those 2-person scenes, the person whose back you're seeing is a stand-in and isn't the actual actor, because they already, they already filmed her side of things and she's gone home for the day or something like that. So yeah, I actually appreciated the like technologically impressive moment of the two of them embracing, and the camera is like on the face of May and then kind of like circles around, and in an unbroken cut we go and see the face of Osha, which is clearly some CG trickery or something like that happening, because yes, Amanda Stenberg is still only the one person, but I think it's I think it's a step up from like the days of the Lindsay Lohan Parent Trap stuff, which even that, like, they kept it simple. They didn't, go crazy with it. So it works there too. But I think I think it would be significantly less compelling if it was like 2 actors trying to do it. And so you weren't as constricted with some of those shots. I think Amanda Stenberg is still doing a great job of embodying kind of both of these roles and making both characters interesting and compelling. Even if I don't necessarily like the writing choices that are feeding into either or both of them. But yeah, it's a tricky thing just because of the nature of, it's one actor playing 2 roles. So you're going to be limited when they are on screen together. But didn't bother me as much as I think it bothered you.
It wasn't really that much of a bother so much as it was just like okay, here we go. This was a concern when they meet up again. What was going to happen?
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see kind of where they continue going with this. Yeah, we'll see. We got two episodes to go. So we will check back in 2 weeks. I don't know if you saw, I'll talk about it as we do kind of the closeout, but, so diving into the report card, we're grade from A+ to F. What do you want to give either these 2 episodes together or the series as a whole thus far?
I mean, the series as a whole thus far, I think, is getting like a still like solid B+, A-. I think this episode Night, I think, is an A+. Episode 6 is probably like a B+. I think there's enough going on outside of it, but it does drop out of that A range because of the May Soul stuff. Yeah.
For me, I think I'll agree. I think Night is like the standout episode of the season, as an A or A+ for me. And then, yeah, like I said, the first viewing at least of Teach/Corrupt just really was a big miss for me. Apart from the OSHA and Stranger stuff, like that's really the only part of that episode that worked. And even there, I felt like it was a lot of kind of talking, but talking about nothing.
Yep.
And that's what you get with philosophy sometimes.
That's often what you get with philosophy.
Is talking about nothing.
Yeah.
But so like that episode kind of drops down to like a C for me, so it's probably like a net B for these couple episodes. But yeah, I mean, I'm still eager and interested to check out the final couple episodes and see kind of how this story wraps up and where we're going from here. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this. You have Ahsoka, Andor, The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, Star Wars A New Hope, Tales of the Empire, The Empire Strikes Back, and The Bad Batch. Anything else that you're watching there on Disney Plus, Cam? Doctor Who's done now, so...
Yeah, Doctor Who's done, but there is not really... Yeah, there really isn't much that I'm watching right now on Disney Plus. It's really just The Acolyte. I'm sure there's going to be stuff that comes up soon. That'll catch my interest. There's a couple documentaries that I want to get around to watching. So,
yeah, I feel like right now we're very much in like, I mean, I feel like we're always in like dropout mode. But obviously,
that is really the
with
thing,
Never Stop Blowing Up, that's definitely like probably the most required viewing that we have right now on a weekly basis. To
the point where you will literally come out and rewatch it again while I'm watching it.
Yep. Yep. I watched the episode when it dropped yesterday while you were still at work, and then you came out and watched it after you got off work. And as I ate dinner / built a Lego Millennium Falcon, I was like, yeah, I'll just enjoy hearing these characters do their stuff again and Cameron's reaction to it. Yeah, lots of fun. So yeah, I don't think I watched anything else on Disney Plus either this last week. My plan for the next few weeks, though, I don't know if you saw this in the Slack channel, but we have Deadpool and Wolverine at the end of the month. So I think next week we'll do maybe Logan to kind of lead into that, come back the following week with the last couple episodes of The Acolyte, and then end of the month, which will be also the day that Deadpool and Wolverine comes out, we'll probably do Deadpool 2. So we might switch around Deadpool 2 and Logan there. If that makes any kind of like sense for us, but I think those are probably the next few episodes of that D Plus show. So stay tuned for all that. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot, 2 B's and 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, I want to give a massive shout out to our most recent episode of That Nerdy Site Show. It was a really Cam-centric show with me talking about Shadows of the Erd Tree as well as Final Fantasy XIV Dawn Trail. I kind of got to really, especially for Dawn Trail, ham it up about the new Viper class that I've played through the story for. I played through its storyline and finished those quests up in the last week or so. So looking forward to talking more about both those games coming this upcoming That Nerdy Site show. So check both last week's out as well as this upcoming week's.
Yeah. You follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. Yeah, it was a very Cam-centric episode because the stuff I've been playing is like, I'm playing Dragon Age Inquisition. And even last week, I hadn't really touched it in a week or so. Last week, because I was away at Logan's wedding, that's basically my shout out is like shout out to Logan and Travia, who are out on their honeymoon now.
Yay.
And enjoying their time. I believe they're doing like a train ride across Canada, I think is a
that's so fucking
is a
Logan.
Component of their honeymoon, and like I think then spending a few days in Calgary or something like that. But
that's awesome. That's so awesome. Another shout out also, a friend of the show, Ari O'Neill, has officially retired from, at least for now, content creation.
Yeah, Rational Passions and content.
Yep. She has stepped away from Irrational Passions. For anybody who doesn't know, kind of like Trevor's and my origin, it goes back to Ari.
Yeah.
Without Ari, there's no us all challenging each other to not break the chain.
Yep.
Whether it was you guys with writing or with me when it came to podcasting.
I absolutely pinged her about that. I was like, hey, remember when we did Don't Break the Chain? And in hindsight, how bad that is for our mental health? Let's not do that again.
I did a podcast a week for 4.5 years. I made a lot, like, the only reason I'm any good at podcasting now is because I kept up that not breaking the chain mentality for that time. And I owe it to her. She gave me my first spot on a podcast. She gave me my first spot to give a review of a game. Like, all my origin point really comes back to meeting Ari at the 21st Amendment at Kind of Funny Live 1. Similar to our friendship, that same event, sharing a hotel room.
Were you not in those early? Because like I feel like my initial meeting with Ari would have been like that same.
It was Beyond 300 for you, right?
No, I wasn't at Beyond 300.
Okay.
It was. I mean, it was the same Kind of Funny Live. But it was like beginning of the trip.
Oh,
like
I didn't get into the following morning.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Y'all were there
we
for
jumped
the
in
Wednesday.
a
I didn't get there
cab
till that Thursday morning.
Yeah, we headed out to Wing Wings and did that. Like I probably have a photo of like that initial Uber ride, out the gate. But yeah, I guess that makes sense. Is you just hadn't arrived yet.
Hadn't arrived. I arrived early that next morning. And we met, and you took me to the back of a hotel, and I didn't know if I was going to die, but the ATM was back there, and it worked out. And fast forward several years later, and now we're roommates.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess the 21st Amendment would have been like to coincide with the IGN tour that we all went on or something, because that was right across the street from the old IGN offices. Yeah,
that was it back then. And and I mentioned in my tweet, I was like, she didn't think I liked her, and she found me very intimidating. But she became my friend anyway. She's an absolute inspiration, a dynamo, and objectively saying this as her friend. One smoking hot lady. So putting that out there. Whatever she does next, she's going to be successful at. Like that girl has no quit in her, and we owe her so much. And just thank you so much, Ari. That's my final shout out for that.
So. There you go. Yeah, shout out to Ari. Follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com. Speaking of like the Don't Break the Chain, yeah, I mean that inspired me to do the like daily writing of. Like for a year, I wrote a thing on Trevor Trove every day. And when we started up That Nerdy Site, I migrated everything over from Trevor Trove. So all that stuff's in there too. So yeah, you can go find that. And then like later I did another, like the problem with the Don't Break the Chain is you burn out. And so yeah, after a year of writing every day, I didn't write for a while. And then I switched to the stupid idea of like, I'm going to blog every day. And so there's 365 videos on YouTube on my old YouTube account, or the Trevor Trove account, or whatever it is, of like daily vlogs basically, and I got burnt out doing that too and stopped doing anything for a while, and then eventually That Nerdy Site kind of sparked into existence. But it like when That Nerdy Site came into existence, it was very much a hey, yeah, we're going to try and do an episode every week, but if we need to take weeks off, we're going to fucking take weeks off, because it is not healthy to force yourself to do it. And so, yeah, shout out to Ari for kind of recognizing that she just doesn't have that drive or that desire to do that stuff anymore. And walking away as like the best mental health choice sometimes is the right way to go. So absolutely.
And there's no rule that says she can't come back.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, also, she's been doing it for 14 years, longer than anybody else we know.
Yep.
So like the only other people we know who've done it longer than her are like actual, like full-time podcast professionals.
Yep.
Like that is the drive that woman has. And I am in awe of her every day.
There you go. If you like what you heard, once again, please remember to like, review, rate, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, class dismissed, and may the force be with you.
And also with you.